I think that you just, well, you always have to be real with people and genuine, and to just not take people for granted. And probably the main thing is to be a good listener. People want to be heard, and it's kind of like, especially when, like, for instance, when I was at the store, I mean, people would tell me all kinds of shit, like about their marriage or friendship or whatever it is, and they have a story to tell, and it kind of became a little bit of a therapy session. But I love that, and it makes them feel good, and you feel good, and it's a genuine friendship. And people just, I think, sometimes can be either really selfish and not a good listener, and probably that's one of my biggest pet peeves that I can say. So be a good listener, and it'll take you far.
Welcome to the Amani Experience podcast. In this podcast, you will experience wisdom, advice, and stories from creatives all over the world. Your host is Amani Roberts, who is a DJ, music producer, professor, avid book reader, and developing salsa dancer. On the show, we love to share the stories of creative professionals, especially people who've gone from the corporate life to the creative life. Once again, welcome to the Amani Experience podcast.
Welcome to episode 42 of the Amani Experience podcast. For this show, we talked with Dawn Dafgek from Bone by Dawn. This was an exciting interview. I was very fortunate to be able to sit down and talk with Dawn. If you haven't heard about her and her business, you will soon. She is a rising star. Her business is on the ascension, so it's really exciting. A couple of things I really enjoyed about our conversation is how she talked about how travel gives her increased self-confidence. I thought that was really interesting and very true, so I'm glad she shared that with us. Also, Dawn is really tight with her mom, and you'll hear themes about how her mom helped her throughout her career, throughout the entire interview. I think that's just really cool, and they're close. Please remember to give us a review on iTunes. Give us a rating. We really appreciate it. And I appreciate you listening to the show. To the show we go. Thanks. Our guest today is a New Jersey native who moved to California over 13 years ago, chasing the siren call of better weather after finishing her degree at FIT in New York. She started her fashion career working in wholesale for a clothing line, where she learned the ins and outs of merchandising and design before going on to be a buyer for a boutique in Manhattan Beach. It was during her time as a buyer that she began designing and crafting her own jewelry and hats, first for herself and then for others. Our guest today, her company is called Bone by Dawn. It is a contemporary lifestyle brand based in Los Angeles and specializing in vintage and handmade hats, as well as high quality handcrafted jewelry designs using pave diamonds, fine metals, and semi-precious stones. Each piece of the line reflects the accessible yet elevated style of our guest today, who is the creator. We'd like to welcome Dawn Dafgek to the Amani Experience podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is fun.
This is fun. I agree. We're happy to have you. So we always do a geographical check-in when we start the interview. So right now, where are we talking from?
Manhattan Beach, California.
Yes, Manhattan Beach, California. We have your studio here as well. Where'd you grow up?
In New Jersey, Union, New Jersey.
So Union, New Jersey. So you're kind of right outside Newark, New Jersey, near in New York City. So cool. And what we want to know is walk us through kind of how you went from FIT and then how you landed here in California. We'll start with that.
Okay. Well, let's see. I went to school, or I was in school for 4 years, and I worked at a clothing boutique pretty much the entire time. And I just kind of had this crazy idea that I wanted to move to California. I'd never been to California. I just knew I didn't want to work in New York City. It was too aggressive for me. I didn't really know what I wanted to do either in the fashion industry. I was kind of a little bit lost in that way. But the owner of the boutique that I worked at, Leslie, who's always been a mentor to me, I told her I wanted to move to California, and I kind of kept talking about it, and finally she was like, just go, because I worked there full time for about almost a year, I think, after I graduated, and still didn't know what I wanted to do. And she was like, "You're too talented to be working at a store in New Jersey, so just go, and you'll always have a job here if you fail."
Nice.
And that was kind of it. So my mom was super supportive, thank God. And I booked a one-way ticket to LA. I had no idea what I was going to do at all. I didn't have any friends. I didn't even know like what area I should live in. So of course I thought Hollywood is where I should live. And then I ended up in Santa Monica, and one of the brands that Leslie carried at her store, she connected me with a couple of different brands. He needed help. He needed a sales rep. And so I got into wholesale, which was great. At first, actually, I wanted to be a stylist. That was my thing. And so I was always helping on photo shoots and trying to build a resume or a portfolio. And then I realized that that's going to take a really long time, and I wasn't making any money. So I needed a paying job.
Right.
And so I started working for this company, and it was small, and it was a couple. So she was the designer for the clothes, and he handled kind of everything else, operations, sales, whatever. And they hired me as an East Coast sales rep, which was awesome because I got to go home a lot. So I would do a lot of trade shows in New York, and I was kind of going back and forth like almost every month, every other month. So I still got to see my friends and family, and learned also the design process and merchandising because I worked really closely with the designer. I mean, there wasn't a lot of employees, so I kind of got to do everything and learn everything, and how to run a business and how to sell and build relationships and all of that. And I was there for 5 years, and then after 5 years, I was kind of just over it. It was exhausting. It sounded like glamorous working in the fashion industry, but really I was like flying all over the country and lugging bags everywhere and setting up a trade show, and so got burnt out on that. And then I was probably unemployed for like 6 months, which was crazy for me because I have to work.
Right.
And it was, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought I went through a phase where I thought I wanted to be a hairdresser, and then I was going to go, because I worked, as part of when I was in college, I worked at a hair salon. So I did always enjoy that. And I was like, okay, I'll go to school to be a hairdresser. And I was just all over the place. And to the point where I would like sit in front of my computer and be in my pajamas all day because I hadn't even left the house because I was so stressed out. And finally I'm like, I just got to go get a job. I'll just go work at a store or something just to get me out. And so this opportunity fell in my lap to run a boutique in Manhattan Beach and go back into retail, which I wasn't sure about. However, they didn't really, there was a couple that opened it. They didn't have any retail experience. So they were kind of like, well, we really need somebody to kind of do everything. And I'm like, ooh, I can be a buyer. And that sounded really exciting to me. So started off sort of, I just changed up the entire store. It was like jeans and t-shirts, and created a whole brand basically, and it was like a one-stop shop, and it was men's and women's, and did all the buying for clothing and accessories. And within that time, I really got into the whole accessory world, and I've always worn a ton of jewelry and loved it. And actually, to backtrack for a minute, when I first moved here, because I had no friends or a life or anything, I started taking jewelry making classes to meet people and to just have a hobby. And so I already knew how to make jewelry.
Right. Now, you took the jewelry classes at the Goddess in Abergavenny, if I'm correct.
Yes.
All right, nice.
And so I would go every week, and there's all these women, and we'd have wine, and it was fun. But it was always a hobby. I never saw myself in being a jewelry designer, to be honest. I thought maybe clothing one day. So then fast forward to being at the store, and 7 years all of a sudden had gone by, and I'm like, how the hell am I still here 7 years? I think after year 5, I was like, okay, I want my own store. I started like really, really wanting to own something and be my own boss.
Yes.
And the store just seemed doable in my mind because that's what I was running one, so I knew everything on how to do it. So I kind of started toying with that idea and casually like looking at spaces and blah, 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 blah. Not that I could afford it, but in my mind, I was just going to figure it out.
Love it.
And then by year 7, retail really started to become hard. Like it was our sales. I mean, we went from having the best year the year before to the year after having the worst year, and it was depressing. And I couldn't figure out what was going on and why people weren't shopping. And then I was like, well, I don't want to open a store now. This is crazy. It's a terrible time. So I just sort of got this idea to start making jewelry for myself again as a hobby, because I thought, we're buying all this jewelry from all these designers and I kind of know how to make a lot of it. It was more about figuring out where they were getting all of their supplies and everything from, like, because I would go downtown and it was not anything great. So I'm like, they're not getting it from there. And I started going to these little like jewelry trade shows, and there's vendors from all over the country. So that's kind of where I scored. And I would buy a little bit at a time at first, because I didn't want to start like going crazy and thinking I'm just going to start my own business and become a jewelry designer overnight and invest all this money. Just started doing it as a hobby for myself. And then meanwhile, I had built up this really great network of clients from being at the store for so long. I mean, people who would come in like every week just to see me or chit chat or buy something, whatever it was. So I start wearing it, then they are interested. So then I start selling it in the store to see how it would do. And it started doing well. And then about quarter 3, the owner, it was just kind of that time for me to move on. And again, like it wasn't doing as well. So there was financial issues, and she kind of wanted to split the time between her working at the store and me working at the store. So then I would be down to part-time. And I remember her like thinking, well, you can start doing your jewelry, and like that's how you can, make up for the income. And I'm like, I'm not gonna just like start selling my jewelry. What are you, crazy? I thought she was nuts. I'm like, I need a full-time job.
Right.
And so I left, and I got actually recruited at a company called Trunk Club.
Right.
Which I didn't know too much about at the time, but I started working there, which was great. It was a great experience. It was like a styling service. So I still was able to work with my clients. It was just more like I would go to their houses and clean out their closet and then shop for them and all this. And still selling my jewelry. And in that time, it really started to take off, because my bosses at Trunk Club, they were amazing. They knew about my jewelry line, and they allowed me to sell it to my clients, and then all the girls there would buy it. And
good.
I kind of just had this whole little business going on. And then I would start doing shows, like jewelry parties at people's houses, at my clients' houses, because then everyone was like, kind of going nuts over it. And it was wild how it started growing. And I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. And so within that time, it was working at Trunk Club was probably, I worked my ass off. I was working ridiculous hours, and then also selling the jewelry. And
right.
Sometimes I'd be doing shows on the weekends. So there'd be times when I'm working 7 days a week. I was like networking with people and going to dinners with clients and like building up this following and really nurturing all of those relationships, which was cool, but it was just exhausting. And the thing I loved being at Trunk Club was I had complete autonomy, basically, because it's kind of an organization, like if you're selling a lot, they don't really give a shit what you're doing, like you can kind of go and come as you please, which was good. And that gave me the taste of like running my own business and being a business owner. But what I didn't like is it was a Nordstrom owned company, which is a good thing. Nordstrom's a great business. However, it was just too corporate for me. That just wasn't me, And I got certified to do men's custom clothing, so I was designing
Nice.
suits and all this stuff, which was great. But at the same time, I wasn't passionate about it, and I had to kind of like dress more conservative at the office every day, which was totally not me. And so I just sort of felt like I was becoming somebody that I wasn't really. I just wasn't comfortable with it. And I remember I did my first kind of show. I don't even know what I guess you call them, but it was called Unique LA, and it's this whole like curated event of local designers. And I applied for it, and I got approved, and so it was a 2-day show, I think. And one of my best friends helped me through the whole thing. She was awesome. And set up this amazing booth. Like, I wanted to have this presence so people would be like, okay, who is this chick?
Right.
And
right.
At that time, I also decided I was going to design hats randomly. It just came to me one day, and because I wear hats all the time, and I couldn't find any that I loved, and I wanted them to be unique enough that they were kind of one of a kind and not too expensive. So I don't know. I just figured I found hats, and I found a hat manufacturer, and then my friend and I, we just stayed up like all night the night before this show, this Unique LA, making hats, and some of them were just like crazy, and they were awesome. And it was the first time that I was showing them at a show. I really didn't even tell anyone. I just like had hats all of a sudden, and so then I put them in my booth with my jewelry and everything, and they were doing really well, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. Okay.
Yes.
I guess I'll do hats then. But I remember feeling so at home and happy doing the show and being around all these other designers and people who were in the same boat, who were trying to get their brand out there and who were creative and were hustlers, and I was like, this is what I want to do. Like, it was amazing. And I remember driving to work the next day crying on my way. I didn't want to go into the office, and I had a great job. Like, it wasn't even like I hated it. I just didn't want to be there. I wanted to do my own thing. I didn't want to have to check in with a boss ever. I wanted to be my own boss and run my business the way I wanted to run and dress the way I wanted to dress and whatever. So I ended up quitting like 2 days later, I think, and just completely out of the blue.
Peace.
I called my mom and I'm like, Mom, I quit my job. She's like, what? Are you insane? I'm like, no. Yes, I think I am insane. But I'm so happy. And just everything was kind of happening at once. I had to find a new apartment, and then I found this amazing space right downtown Manhattan Beach, and it was more rent than I've ever paid before, and I just decided to quit my job, so that was kind of scary. But I just knew that I'd somehow figure it out, and I could always go get another job somewhere. And I don't know, that's just me. Like, I learned all of that kind of from my mom, like to just be a hustler, and life sort of works out the way it's supposed to. And that was a year ago. And since then, growing my brand, doing my own thing, my own boss, it's phenomenal. So I couldn't be happier.
Onward and upward. Great,
Yeah.
Great summation. I love it. If you were going to summarize yourself now, 2018, we're almost halfway through the year. Dawn, how would you summarize yourself in like 30 seconds?
I would say driven for sure. Creative for sure. But I think I don't take myself too seriously. Like, I have a pretty good sense of humor when it comes to everything, life, whatever it is. And that's why I don't put too much pressure on myself. So doing all of this, it comes very natural to me because I'm not a stressed out kind of person, and I'm a positive person. So I'm always like happy, and I know that it's going to work out the way it's supposed to work out, and kind of just like have faith in the universe.
Good. And then based on like your experience, what do you think is important for creative professionals such as yourself, myself? What's important for people like us to succeed in today's business environment?
I think kind of that, to always stay positive and to trust the process or just trust the universe and kind of what it has in store for you. And to just always live in passion. Like if you're passionate about something, everything will kind of just happen the way it's supposed to. And to always believe in yourself and don't lose that, you know?
Agreed. Now, as you think back, and you kind of gave a great summary of your career, when did you realize it? Was it at Unique LA when you're like, okay, this is going to work. I need to kind of go all in, jump with both feet. When was that sort of turning point so far?
It was then. That was definitely the turning point. But prior to that, I remember driving to work all the time. I mean, you know, LA traffic sucks. And so I was in my car a lot. And I started getting really into podcasts. And all the podcasts I would listen to were entrepreneurial ones and how people started their business and when they quit their job. And I kept thinking, like, I would hear one where there was this magical answer of a time frame or maybe how much money you have in the bank or whatever it was of when I should quit my job and really take this thing seriously. But, you know, there is no answer. Yeah. And it really was just a feeling. And I just jumped on it. And I tend to sometimes be impulsive, and which has worked out for me. But, you know, sometimes it's not always great. And I just followed my gut.
Good.
And that was it.
And what are some of the podcasts that you remember that really helped you out as you were kind of coming to your decision and really planning? How I Built This is a great one. Guy Raz, well done.
One of my favorites. And then the other one is School of Greatness.
Lewis Howes, well done.
Those two probably I listen to the most. And the other ones I would kind of just like plug it in, entrepreneurs, whatever would come up. But those I listen to pretty regularly.
Thinking about how your business is today, why do you love what you do?
Because I have complete creative freedom. And I don't know. I mean, travel is another big thing for me. So I really wanted financial freedom to be able to pick up and go wherever I wanted to go around the world. And I think that helps me as a person and also for my brand. Yeah.
Good. Speaking of travel, what cities are like up next on kind of your travel bucket list?
Well, very excited about this.
Talk to us.
I just got back from Morocco.
Okay.
And I'm going back again in October so I was on a yoga retreat, which was my second one with this company. And I'll kind of get into that part a little bit later. But I went to Marrakesh for 3 days prior to, just to shop completely for my brand and whatever else, get inspired, did the yoga retreat. But I became friends with the owner because I did her retreat last year in Cuba. And in that time, she said that she wants to expand her retreats because she does them all over the world, but she doesn't want to just offer yoga because not everyone likes yoga. And she asked if I would be interested in teaching a creative expression retreat, which I'm like, okay, that's pretty much my dream, is to travel and work, but be creative at the same time. So
the triple play.
Yeah. So we're going to Morocco October 6th to the 13th. Where I'll get to teach a group of people who, you know, they're all going for different reasons. But anyway, besides that, I'm going to Paris for the first time with my mom.
Congrats.
And I've always wanted to go to Paris, but she would have killed me if I had ever gone without her. So it's our first mother-daughter trip out of the country since I was probably 10 years old or something.
Okay.
So I'm super excited about that.
I'm excited for you. Now, why Morocco? How, out of all the countries and places to visit, how did that kind of appear on your radar?
So my friend that I went to Cuba with, she's the one that kind of discovered this company. It's called Yoga Adventures Worldwide. And Christina is the owner. And so Amy, who I went to Cuba with, she has been on a bunch of her retreats. And she just said, you want to go to Morocco? And I'm like, well, yeah, because I go to Europe a lot, but
right.
I mean, Morocco is just like somewhere completely different. And so I like to say yes to things as much as I can. So I just said yes.
That's great.
And I'm glad that I did. So yeah. And then when Christina asked me to teach it, I'm so glad that I had already gone, because it is a little overwhelming at first, you know, had I just walked into it and then try and like teach people how to shop the souks and make all this stuff, I wouldn't have really known what I was doing. But now I feel like a pro.
There you go. Now, what have been some of the most valuable lessons your mother has taught you while you've grown up? Because I know she's had a big impact on your life. So maybe you can share some of the most valuable lessons she's taught you.
Well, so my mom, she's a single mother, and we're very close. I'm an only child. And my mom, she, before I was born, was a singer, actress, dancer on Broadway. So she's a super creative, talented person. And she kind of gave that up when she had me, but she still dances and everything. God bless her. She taught me what really it is to survive financially, because she didn't have help. She had no money, and that's all I know. And she could never give me anything that I want. So, I mean, if I have expensive taste, I have to go out there and get it, So I got, like, when I got working papers at 14, you can get a job. I got a job immediately, and I've always worked, and I've always appreciated hard work and what it takes to actually succeed. So she taught me that, and she also is just the most amazing, supportive person throughout this whole process. Sometimes she thinks I'm crazy, but she believes in me more than anyone,
Cool. Thinking about like life, work, personal, what is something that scares you? What scares you?
Failing.
And then how do you work through that fear so you can continue to...
I have this weird fear almost every day I wake up that it's going to fail. Just initially when I wake up, it's a weird thing that won't go away. But then I get up, I go work out, I start my day, I have a schedule, and that feeling goes away within like the first hour, because I'm like, you're not going to fail. And you're also not going to go work for someone ever again. So you're going to make this work. You're going to figure it out.
Yes. I love how you say that you're so emphatic when you say that. I respect that. I'm there with you. Yes. Yes. You're welcome.
I got a taste of the good stuff. I'm not going back.
That's right. We can't go back. No. Now, the fashion industry, specifically like jewelry, even hats, designing hats, creating the style fashion, it's a very crowded space. What do you do to distinguish yourself so you can continue to rise above the noise and distinguish yourself from the competition?
I think that I've been so fortunate having such a strong network and support system from my clients and friends, and especially this community. The South Bay it's not LA. Like, it's just so different, and people are so real and loving and supportive that I think, and I love meeting new people. I love I have a ton of friends and building relationships. And I think because I'm genuine and I have all of this, all of these clients and people who believe in me, that is what has made my business so successful, and what makes me what sets me apart from other people, because I will go above and beyond. I mean, if I have to drop something off to somebody's house or whatever it is, it's the little things, and I think people appreciate that. And it goes from like someone being your client to them being a lifelong friend. So yeah, I've been extremely fortunate.
Now, relationships are challenging for some people in this day and age to really kind of cultivate and grow. Since you've been very successful at that, what advice would you give people who are maybe like young and up and coming, trying to kind of grow relationships and create their strong tribe to kind of help them along the way? What would you advise people like that?
I think that you you always have to be real with people and genuine, and to just not take people for granted. And probably the main thing is to be a good listener. People want to be heard, and it's kind of like, especially even like, for instance, when I was at the store, I mean, people would tell me all kinds of shit, like about their marriage or friendship or whatever it is, and they have a story to tell, and it kind of became a little bit of a therapy session. But I love that, and it makes them feel good, and you feel good, and it's a genuine friendship. And people just, I think, sometimes can be either really selfish and not a good listener, and probably that's one of my biggest pet peeves that I can say. So be a good listener, and it'll take you far.
I read a quote that is very meaningful to you. Look at me. And then this quote, it says, "Live what you love." Explain why that quote is meaningful to you.
So I found a bracelet in my travels, and I got this when I was working at Trunk Club, and I wanted to look down on it every day and for that to be a reminder. To just always be happy, and I don't ever feel like I'm at work when I'm doing what I love. And so my entire life and work life and friendships and travels, all of that have just sort of become this one amazing experience. And I don't ever want to have to like feel unhappy walking through the door because I'm at a company I don't want to be at, or being somebody that isn't true to myself. So it's a constant reminder.
Great reminder. How has a failure or an apparent failure set you up for later success? Do you have a favorite failure of yours?
Failure. I guess I wouldn't call it a failure, but I think that period that I talked about earlier where I had left my old company when I was unemployed for 6 months and lost, having, the fact that I just walked into a clothing store and I was ready to take a part-time job doing whatever, just to keep myself busy, and it turned into so much more. And looking back now, had I not had that opportunity, I don't know if I would be doing what I'm doing right now, because the only reason why I was even ballsy enough to take the leap is because I had all the support that I had got just from working at the store and building these relationships with all the people in the community.
Right. So one thing led to another. Everything happens for a reason.
Yeah. So in my mind, I guess, when I was unemployed, I felt like a failure. But looking back, it was, it opened the doors to something amazing.
Right. The seeds that you were planting years prior started to grow. All right. I like it. Now, as you get more successful, we tend to acquire more critics, more haters, as we say. How do you handle your critics?
Well, to my knowledge, I don't know if I have any critics.
Which is great.
I might behind my back, and that's a whole different story.
But so far, so good.
No, I think it's great. And I think I don't know about critics, but I know people can be envious, and it's hard. It's hard to do what I did. And I now have so much freedom, and I think if I was friends with myself and I didn't want to be at my job, and I looked at this person who was able to pick up and like go to Morocco whenever they want to, or do just have the freedom to, like, if I wanted to go to have lunch with somebody, like a client or a friend on a random Tuesday at 2:00, I mean, I don't have to ask anyone. I can just go and come as I please. I can see how that might be,
yes,
create a little jealousy maybe.
A little bit, but you've made it. This is.
But I hope that ultimately I inspire those people to finally take the leap.
Agreed. Tell us about the darkest time in your life, how you got through that, and what did you learn from that experience?
Probably when I keep going back to that one period when I quit my job.
Right.
But that was pretty traumatic for me, only because I was sort of part of the family and I had been there for 5 years. So the owners of that company were really kind of grooming me to take over the company eventually. You know what I mean? So when I left, it didn't end well because they weren't happy about that. So it was kind of like I felt like I was going through a divorce. And I was depressed, and I didn't know what was next for me and how I was going to succeed. And the worst part about it was I was sending out my resume. This I hate, I was sending my resume to all these people, and it's just a piece of paper. They don't know who I am. They don't know what I'm capable of or anything. And it was like constant rejection. So it felt terrible. But then, that happened for a reason, because it led me to where I am today.
Do you remember what you did to work through the depression? Because many times when people are in that gap of employment, it can really, some people don't ever kind of get out of it. They just kind of take a job, and this is a continued downward spiral. How did you work your way out of the depression to kind of thrive later on?
I have to say, him being my first boss, he taught me so much more than I could ever imagine. And one of the things that he taught me was kind of the most successful people take the biggest risks, you know? And so when I had gone to the clothing store, I mean, I was taking a ginormous pay cut, basically, but I was very forthcoming with them. And I said, listen, you know, if I turn this thing around, I want to be compensated, you know? So, yeah, it kind of I just took one big giant risk, and it ended up working out. But the only reason why I was confident is because I know what I'm capable of, and I know how hard I was going to work, and I know what my vision is, and I had a very clear vision.
Good. Who was the most influential person for you growing up?
My mom.
I figured you to say that, but I just wanted to verify.
My mother. Well, not just my mom. I guess not really growing up, but when I was at that boutique, when I was in college, the owner, her, I mean, she was just, had it not been for her to push me to get the hell out of New Jersey and come here, I would have never done it. And I watched her. I mean, I watched her build a business, and her business now is unbelievable. And she just started with this tiny little boutique, and she just kept growing and growing, and now she has a big store and another store and a website and all of it, you know? So looking at her, and that's one reason why I've always loved working for small companies, is because I see what they do. It doesn't seem like if I went and worked for Trunk Club, who has thousands of employees, as my first job, I'd be like, I can't start my own business. This is insane. But seeing people do it and starting small, and how they grow their business, and being a good owner, or, you know, running it well, that taught me that it's possible.
Right. Now, what was her name, the boutique owner?
Leslie.
Do you still keep in touch with her?
Oh, yeah.
So, okay. So if we're going to say, we're going to share this with Leslie. We're going to say, Leslie, here's, you know, maybe 15, 20, 30-second message from Dawn saying how much of an impact you've had on your career now. What would you say to Leslie?
I would just say thank you for all of your support and believing me. And she still does, because I've done trunk shows at her store with my jewelry, and she's always been a great cheerleader for me, and she works her ass off, and she deserves all of it. And she is just an amazing woman.
Great. When you were 21, you were still in New York City, correct?
Yes.
All right. So we're going to travel back to New York City. Let's say we meet up in Manhattan, and we're going to speak to 21-year-old Dawn and give her some advice. What advice would you give your 21-year-old self?
I would say to be fearless and to take risks. And I look back, and when I was, I guess I moved here when I was 23, so I was kind of around that age, and I was scared. I mean, I remember feeling the same way then about moving to California, the way that I felt a year ago when I wanted to quit my job and start my own thing. And at that time, I remember looking back at my young self thinking, holy shit, like, I had balls to just pick up and move out here and not know anyone.
Yes,
and
that's major.
I was like, I want that girl back right now, you know? So I think I kind of had it. I was confused at that age, but I knew where I needed to be. And in my mind, I was already kind of there.
Right. What gave you the courage or the balls to move to California knowing no one all the way across the country, different time zone, which is an issue. That's different for people. Mm-hmm. Like, how did you have such courage?
Just support. My mom, she flew out here with me, and she helped me look for apartments for 2 weeks and get a car. And no one told me that I can't do it.
Yes.
You know, everyone believed in me. And I'm like, well, if they believe in me, then I believe in me. Yes. And, you know, some people thought I was crazy, but they didn't think that I couldn't do it. And it's always like, for me, when something seems scary, you always think about the safety net. Like, I can move back home. I can go back to the job that I was working at, or get another job. Like, it's not forever.
Yes.
But now it's forever.
Yes. I love how you said no one told you couldn't do that. And so you're like, well, then let's do it.
Yeah.
That's great. What is the one lesson in life that took you the longest to learn?
Probably self-confidence, I guess. I think, you know, everyone kind of goes through their insecurities, and as you mature and learn more about yourself, those start to go away. I mean, it's not ever going to go away completely, but I feel so comfortable in my skin and who I am and the direction that I'm going in life and the daughter that I am, the friend that I am to people. And back then I was just kind of like, nervous and awkward and unsure of myself and what I was capable of.
And what do you do to maintain your self-confidence and your self-worth so you can continue to grow as an individual?
I take care of myself as much as possible. And I would say traveling has really helped. I probably got the travel bug like 5-6 years ago.
How has traveling helped?
I learned so much about myself, and I think it's hard for me. Like, I can talk to anyone, but I'm not good at initiating conversations with strangers. And I think traveling has taught me to do that, and it's really not that scary. And once you do, you can meet amazing people and learn from people. I learn how I react in stressful situations that, traveling tends to do.
This is true.
And it's just like chill and be cool and breezy.
Breezy. I like that.
Yeah.
Every great person has a sentence. What is your sentence? For example, my sentence would be, I help people unlock their creativity by teaching them how to DJ. What is your sentence?
Well, we kind of already talked about it earlier, because live what you love.
Okay. We'll like that. Live what you love. What is one new habit that you've added to your daily routine in the past year or so that has been most beneficial?
Well, for me, because I've never had to create my own schedule, I've never worked from home. You have to really be self-motivated, and it's kind of weird. It's weird. So in order to I don't ever want to feel like I'm slacking. I work out at 7 a.m., which I don't have to. I can work out anytime during the day.
True.
But I do that because that's what time I used to work out when I had a 9 to 5. And so I create these habits every single day that keeps me in check. So I get up, I make my bed, I go work out. I have to think about what I'm going to post on Instagram every day, which can sometimes be stressful.
That could take hours.
Once that's done, I have to come up with all the hashtags and like other people's photos and comment the whole thing. And then I start my day. So yeah, I guess that's my weird. Oh, I water my plants. There's I do that once a week. It's just, I try and
Little things.
keep myself in check.
Good. Now tell us, where does the name Bone by Dawn come from? How did you create that name?
Well, I didn't really come up with it. This is an interesting story, and people ask me this all the time. But so my friend Jenny, she's one of my best friends. She's the one that helped me when I was talking about earlier when we went to Unique LA. Her husband, Aaron, is super creative and hilarious. And so one night we all went to their house, and I was like, I have to come up with a name, because people were like, you need an Instagram, you need a name. And I'm like, I'm just trying to do this as a hobby. I'm not, relax. And so I'm like, fine, I'll start an Instagram. And a name, I'm like, I just want a 4-letter word. I want it to be very simple. And so after lots of wine, and he came up with the name Bones. So at first, like a lot of my jewelry, I was working with these like big pieces of bone, and I had kind of more statement necklaces going on. And he came up with the name Bone, and then he was like, we'll call it Bone by Dawn. And then so all of these names, we were thinking of how funny it would be for people to be like, I just got boned, or have you been boned? And it just got out of control, and we were crying, laughing hysterically. And so it just stuck. And it's so my personality too, because I don't take anything seriously, and I can be super sarcastic, and it's probably the best name I could have used, because seeing like a grandma who buys a necklace say, I just got boned, is hysterical.
I love it.
And then it also makes them not take themselves too seriously, and that's kind of what I want my brand to be about.
Good story. We're voracious readers here on the Money Experience podcast. If there's 1, 2, maybe 3 books that you think people should stop what they're doing right now and start to read them right away, what books would you recommend?
I'm not a huge reader, but I did read. Well, I will say I started with The Secret when I read The Secret. I mean, there's so many books out there that are about the law of attraction, but I read that years ago, probably before I even moved here, which kind of helped me, visualize where I wanted to be, and which was in California. And then I moved on to reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That kind of helped me in my mind think about, being a business owner and blah, blah, blah. Then Girl Boss was a good one.
Yeah.
She was super inspiring in her story. And, she started out in a garage and just exploded. And I'm currently reading
The Subtle Art.
The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. I had to relook at it.
Yes, great
which
book.
Which is great.
Yes, great book. Great selections. Thank you for sharing. So we've kind of reviewed your career from when you were at school to now. We've talked about a lot of different moments. If you were to pick maybe one or two accomplishments or moments that really make you the most proud currently, what comes to mind?
As far as moments go, I guess one that really stands out is when I did my first yoga retreat last year in Cuba. And I was really lost at the time because now I was at that point where I didn't know if I should quit my job and start my own thing, if I can do it, blah, 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 blah. And I just wasn't happy. I didn't feel happy because I was not fulfilled with what I was doing, because I wasn't giving 100% of myself to my job, and I wasn't giving 100% of myself to my jewelry line.
Okay.
And I wanted to give 100. I felt like I was failing myself because I was splitting my energy into these two things. And so I went on this retreat, and I'm not like a huge yogi or anything, but I got invited, and I'm like, sure, I can do that. And you had no cell phones, no Wi-Fi, nothing. And so you're 7 days fully in your head and with other people who are kind of in the same boat and doing yoga 2 hours a day, and just, I don't know. It became very clear to me then. And that was kind of the moment when I thought, okay, I'm doing this. The question is when. When am I going to leave and start it?
Great. That's an excellent moment to share. So well done.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So we're almost to the end of the interview, but I definitely just want to say thank you for allowing us to interview, me to interview you. I really respect the work you're doing. You have an extremely strong work ethic, so keep it going. I love your business model and your products. We're going to talk about some hats in a little bit, so we're going to talk about that as well. So just keep it up. You have a great tribe, so thank you. And we let people, our guests, leave off the show with any last minute words of wisdom. So you can think about that real quick, and then we'll let you kind of take us home. But thanks again, and we look forward to staying in touch with you. So take us home.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think it's just to follow your dreams and what makes you happy. If something's not working for you and it's not making you happy, then you shouldn't be doing it. And, I know sometimes that's easier said than done, but if maybe you don't feel fulfilled from your job, but there is something else that makes you happy, and it might be a side project or whatever that may be, do it. And don't procrastinate it, because there could be opportunity there that you're not even thinking about.
Definitely. Great job. Awesome podcast debut.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Amani Experience podcast. You can check out the show notes on amaniexperience.com/podcast. Please remember to leave us a review on the platform you are listening on, and share this podcast with anyone who you feel would benefit from listening. See you soon on our next episode.
Wait, can we end that one?
Go ahead.
I lost my thought.
Go ahead. We can end that one and edit it out. Go ahead. Then we'll put that in the outtakes.
Okay.
Take a break.
I eat love.
Little rewind. Go ahead. You can answer whenever you want to.
Okay. Should I start from the beginning of that one?
I can repeat the question however you want me to.
Repeat the question.